Yeah. Not quite able to see that, but
What are you trying to do?
I'm just trying to see the screen.
Do you guys want to sit over here?
No, we're fine.
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
See it?
Or do you want me to move the screen?
I think I'm good.
Good afternoon. It's 1:05, and I'd like to call the meeting of the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust into session. Before we begin, as required by the open meeting law, you're hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify their chair prior to the meeting, and since there's only Mr. Bowden there, I'm just going to ask him. You're not doing either of those things, so... Per the Attorney General's office, the Affordable Housing Trust may hold an open session for topics not reasonably anticipated. And there's no statement, Jamie, about the remote participation, is there?
I believe in the hybrid you should note that people are participating.
Okay. The trust itself is physically located right and holding the meeting in the Griffin Room. There are remote participants that are participating via GoToMeeting. That's for everybody's edification. All right. Andrea, you out there?
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, I'm going to be having a problem with my sound from them.
Yeah, we're having problems getting any sound from the remote participants, so if you could hang in there.
I'm just going to back out and go back in. Apologize, it's worked flawlessly every day. Such is life.
This conference will now be recorded.
And here I thought I was the only one who had computer problems.
We're trying to get remote participation working. There's a smoke signal going up right now, so if you look on the northwest horizon.
Have you started yet?
No, we're waiting for you.
I just wanted to.
That's kind of a fib, but
Have you talked to Liz Phelps? You'll be
yeah,
receiving.
the environmental,
You'll be
yeah,
receiving a call.
she's going out tomorrow morning.
Fantastic.
By the way, Registry of Deeds, Tom needs.
No,
Are you taking care of that? Okay, good.
All set?
yeah, Danielle has that other information about the check for the registry. Well, I do not have the settlement statement yet, so I don't know the exact amount for the wire transfer. That's for the purchase price.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, you took care of that then?
Yeah,
Good.
like I said, had 24 emails this morning.
Don, can you ask Andrea if she can hear us?
Andrea, can you hear us? You can hear us.
Yes, we can still hear you.
And I can hear you. It's a miracle.
All right, carry on. My apologies.
Okay. So is there anybody here for public comment?
Was that a question?
It was a real question.
I'm just here as a representative of Mid Cape Church Homes,
Okay.
just for education and information.
Okay, great. And Art Bowden is here in the audience. Have you had the opportunity to look over the meeting minutes for May 20th?
I have.
Anyone wish to make a motion to approve?
Chairman, I move that the minutes for May 20th, 2021 for the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust be approved as published.
Second that?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, you haven't experienced a real in-person meeting yet, have you? Yeah, we don't have to poll like anymore. We're all in the same room.
That's nice.
It is nice.
That.
All right. Action plan, next steps. Andrea, you want to share what we've been up to?
Sure. So, oh, there's a lag. That's going to be strange for me. We spoke with Jennifer Goldson, and she's prepared to move forward, as I mentioned at the last meeting. And she's provided a memo that's in the packet. So she does have a question, two questions. One is she has findings of some of the visionary interviews that were started before COVID. And she was wondering if she could present at the July meeting on those findings. I don't believe that she completed all of the visionary interviews, but some of them were completed. So that is one question. And then the second thing is she provided two scenarios to kick off the community engagement around the action plan. One of them is to continue with the original plan, which is to hold the focus groups and to do that virtually through the summer. And then the other scenario is to do a different sort of planning process with 6 boards or committees of your choosing at their already scheduled summer meetings. So the details are kind of laid out in the memo, and I'm sure she'd be open to feedback on how to tweak it, but those are 2 open questions from her.
Okay. Trust members, have you had a chance to look over her memo? I mean, there's another ask in there, Andrea, that I need to point out to them. It's entirely reasonable, but just to bring it up publicly, they had expended certain funds in furtherance of our action plan in order to get us to the point that we're at. Some of that's stale. Some of it they're going to have to go back over again because of the COVID disconnect. And given that fact and the fact that they've expended more hours to not get a conclusion, it's an entirely reasonable request that they're asking for a budget amendment. In this, is this right? 1,000, Andrea?
That's right. Yes.
Okay, so we need to discuss that also.
And if I can add one thing to that, one of the benefits of updating the data, aside from it being more current, is that the new census data is coming out this fall, and it would be really, really great to include that as well.
Yeah, which again, time translates into money, and it is a contract for a consultancy. So if we want to get that data, which I think we do, honestly, it would be silly to get to this point and blow off a 10-year census without exploring what it says. But again, this would require us to assent to the $1,000. So does someone want to make a motion that we agree to augment the contract by amending it for the extra hours up to?
I would make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that we amend the contract to increase it by an amount of not to exceed $1,000 to extend the contract.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments further on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. As to the meetings with stakeholder town committees, town entities, I think it'll be a wise idea. The question is, coordinating it. Because off the top of my head, you have the planning board, the ZBA, possibly the Board of Health, because some of this would involve them. CPC is pretty clear that they want to be involved in knowing how their money's being spent.
Open space,
Yeah, and possibly real estate open space, the housing committee. So it's a question of coordinating them somehow. Andrea, you're going to have to work with me outside of the meeting to be able to work that out.
Okay.
So, okay, the original scope. I mean, this is what we were waiting for. We wanted to be able to do focus groups with people that could see each other and you could gauge reactions as opposed to playing Hollywood Squares. So I think it's important that we start, getting the band back together again and starting to do this and spiraling out to do as much possible. I'm really reticent to do remote things relative to this, because this is such an on-the-ground, from the bottom up type of endeavor. I think it would be a horrible mistake if we just,
Well, it might be an opportunity to, if, let's say we were to do like, just for the sake of argument, we were to do 3 or 4 different engagement, right? Maybe one of them be online or a hybrid online, because some people
People that
may
are
have
nervous.
medical issues and they, yeah.
yeah, I'd go for that. I'm just saying that,
I can't hear you.
Oh,
yeah,
I was-
that mic doesn't work nearly as well as that one.
I'm sorry.
Does work.
Do we know how long the remote and in-person participation will happen? I got a mic here.
Just pull it closer.
I got one right here.
I know, but. Go on.
Do we know how long that's gonna, we're gonna be doing both? How long that's gonna extend?
I don't. I'm not one of the governor's aides. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still remote completely, Beacon Hill, so.
Some places are. I mean, some companies have a policy that they're not getting together yet. Is that not right, Andrea?
Correct.
A lot of companies,
And I talked to a state office today, and they're remote with some degree of hybrid.
yeah.
Period. They can have one person in a person-to-person meeting.
Yeah, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but the point is the next step needs to have Jen involved in this. And we tried to make that happen, Andrea and I, but it's probably okay, because organically the extra time is going to bring us closer to exactly what we're discussing now, is when can we all get together? And it's not hybrid anymore. But I would totally agree with Judith that it would make a dandy augmentation if we were able to use the computers too, to get people involved.
And there's other platforms than GoToMeeting and Zoom that are more interactive.
And I'm presuming that since Jennifer's in that business, that's one of the things she'll discuss with us, is like what her action plan to create the action plan is. So,
Excuse me, Don.
go on.
Just as like a point of clarification, she's not suggesting that all of it would be virtual. She's just suggesting that the very next step could be virtual, to be done this summer, as opposed to waiting until the fall to do the next step. So she is looking for some more information around the potential around in-person engagement, to be able to figure out what that revised timeline is going to be and what those activities will look like. So this is just looking for a decision on the immediate next step.
Okay, I mean, my comment to that, to just throw it out there, is having been to my share of dozens and dozens and dozens of meetings that were done remotely, you don't get the same outcome. We held a couple of liquor hearings that were absolutely like the Wild West.
Very interesting.
I am not entirely certain that that would be the place I'd want to put all my eggs in a basket, is the first meeting be a virtual meeting.
Can I ask, did we decide not to do anything until the fall?
No, we haven't. That's what this is discussing.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. I don't see why we can't do a virtual meeting this summer, as long as we, at some point, do have an in-person meeting this summer, as long as, if we're going to have 3 or 4 meetings, we do have one of them be a hybrid meeting.
Yeah, and that's what I would
Yeah.
think would be valuable, but I really wouldn't think that it was a great idea that the first kickoff for this be virtual, because it's hard to get people to understand that we're all in this together if we're all saying it apart.
Yeah, we did the town meeting.
Yeah, but we did it in real time at a real place. So it's possible to do. I mean, we have the gazebo, we have other facilities that we could use outdoors, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, the Griffin Room is a fairly large room, and the way that we seem to be progressing would suggest to me that if you're talking about, say, August, that, I mean, if you think back 2 months prior to today, I'm not entirely certain everybody would have said, yeah, we're going to get into a room and have a meeting. Things are happening pretty quickly. So I'd like to be able to do both. Because if we're really going to get involved with community engagement, we really
If we
need.
had a barbecue, we'd get a lot more people too.
Okay, so we can count on Judith to,
Some beer.
Cheeseburgers and beer.
Judith's going to set up the
I'm
barbecue.
gonna do the barbecue. It's not a bad idea.
It wouldn't be if there was some instant way of getting somebody to cater it. All right, well, do you have enough to discuss with her? Because like I said, I think it's our consensus that we'd like to do both. We wouldn't want to defer having a public meeting until the fall.
Right. So the conversation around the in-person public meetings, I think you're thinking of a larger scale, like the forum style meeting. And that would not be the immediate next step. So the immediate next step would be either focus groups, or she's suggesting this alternative meeting with existing, you already mentioned 6 boards or committees that would make a lot of sense. So those would be much smaller meetings. The focus groups would be up to 7 people. And then if you wanted to do the planning activity with the 6 boards and committees instead, those would be, the size of a board or committee. So they're much, much smaller meetings. So I just need some clarity on whether you want to stick with the original plan of doing the focus groups, or if you want to pivot to this alternative of meeting with 6 boards and committees during their pre-existing summer schedules.
All of that's interesting, but there's a fundamental question that would still have to be answered by Ms. Goldson. These focus groups, what's the definition of a stakeholder?
It would be someone who was on your stakeholder list.
That's my point. We don't have a physical list in front of us right now to rekindle this thing. So the first step 1A really has to be that we get together with her and say, okay, let's understand exactly who, generically, who's in these focus groups. And then we can call them. Because I have a big, I'm probably at variance with some people over this. I view stakeholders as people who also are affected by this. Realtors, I mean, there's a bunch of people that affordable housing actually pertains to. Some of them might be at least partially hostile to the idea, but that's the whole point, is to create a consensus about the need and how we can address the need. So I'm waiting for a response from Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of that thinking went into the original creation of the stakeholder list, but it was obviously a year ago, so it certainly would make a lot of sense to revisit that list and make sure that you agree on who should be a part of those focus groups. I imagine that's like a logistical aspect of just setting up the focus groups, and we can talk to Jen about those details. But the overall structure, I think, is what she wants some guidance on. If you do in fact want to move forward with focus groups and have more discussion around who would be in them, or if you want to do the planning activity with the boards and committees. I think that's just what she's looking for right now.
I think both, but
I
Brenda?
was gonna say, a good plan would be to maybe have Jennifer come in next meeting in July, and then potentially schedule in August, rolling into September, getting in front of those boards. And we can pick, you listed 5 here: planning, ZBA, CPC, health, real estate, and open space. Maybe start with that, and then we can.
Housing, that would be 6.
Right. Housing. So get Jennifer in here and get a plan together from August, rolling a little bit into September to get in front of the boards.
Yeah, and I want to get a feel, to be honest with you, I want to get a feel for where's Jennifer's coming from, because she initially wasn't the only person involved in this that I had discussions with. And it would be good, especially with the lapse of time, to be able to confirm, okay, here's where we are, here's who we're going to set up these focus groups with, and here's what it looks like. Because part of me feels like we have to treat this like we're starting over, because I'm not sure that anybody here can recite to me what the stakeholders are off the top of your head?
Exactly.
Well, we came up with a.
We did, but that's my point. I want to make sure that we got it in front of us.
Come up with a small committee of people to come to look at that stakeholder list and see if we've missed anybody? Groups, I mean, not individuals, but groups.
I don't know exactly where we left off, because it kind of devolved and the plug got pulled.
Yeah. well,
So
COVID.
that's my point is, if we're going to do this, let's do it right and just assume nothing. Jen can come to the meeting and we'll get a status report that says, here's what the stakeholders are, here's what I think a schedule looks like, and these are the committees, and I just want to confirm that you want me to get on their agendas, so that we can have a real physical discussion and not just try to vaguely recall what we left off with last year. Because to my thinking, it's been like a year and a half.
Yeah.
To rekindle this, if we're going to devote more money and bring the contract back, which is imperative, we got to get some real outcome out of it now. So,
And given the fact it was a year and a half ago, I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
I agree. Well, that's why I brought it up. I mean, I
That's
think,
why we're extending with Jennifer, because she has
Yeah.
to update all that data.
so I
Makes
think
sense.
the first concrete step is we agenda her next month. She comes in, we talk about all these particulars face to face. So that would be my plan.
And are we thinking that we're getting on the agenda of the boards in their current meetings? We'd have to get on
Yeah, I
those
think that was
agendas.
what, Andrea, that's what she was thinking, right? So
Yeah, that's how I read it.
it'd be just an item on the agenda for the planning board, an item on the agenda for the ZBA. The thing is, we're going to have those discussions sooner rather than later, because, they have people submitting plans. The ZBA may or may not be working on a 40B. I mean, that everything in the world doesn't revolve through us, and I'm pretty sure the rest of you are somewhat familiar that in Chloe's path behind the fire station, the developer is looking to try to develop out that parcel as a 40B. We don't have any involvement in it currently, but, and I suggested to that person at the Board of Selectmen level that we will not be their first stop.
No, and they look at it, there's a process under 40B, and when you go for the comprehensive permit, there's a whole process to go through, and
Yeah, And I'm in a butter.
They have to
so
work
I don't
through it.
know.
You can disclose that,
you in a butter?
Yeah.
All you do is disclose it.
Yeah, that's all.
but more to the point, live and learn lessons. More to the point, I explicitly said to them, you're not going to be able to use us on your checklist as doing community engagement. That the trust is not set up to be the first person you see, so that you've got us and our endorsement.
Oh, for the developer. Yeah.
The community outreach means just that. They're going to have to reach out to the community, and then we'll be involved at some point. But the one lesson I learned from the last thing that fell apart was, before you start getting really excited about a plan, it would be good to see the plan. Because conceptually, a lot of things are somewhat different from the actual execution of what people are seeking to do. Okay, do you have enough then for Jen Goldson? We've made the vote. We'd like her to come in, and you got what it is we wanted to ask.
Yes. Can I make one suggestion?
Yes.
So because she suggested two separate scenarios for you all to choose one, I'm going to go ahead and assume that not both activities would not be included within the same budget, that if you wanted to do both, it might be a higher budget. So
Then she
in
might want to
anticipation of
actually
that
tell us what that number would be.
Sure. And also, I hear your concern about, if we're getting in front of boards and committees in August, that those things need to be scheduled and planned sooner rather than later. I wonder if we might just start getting on their agendas now and figure out whether it's going to be a trust member giving them an update on the action plan independent of Jennifer, just so that we're on those agendas in case she is available. Because if not, I'm concerned that we won't be able to get into those meetings and we'll have to wait longer.
We don't have an action plan yet, do we?
That's what we're contracting for. Yeah, and actually, action plan with a small a about how we approach getting everything together. I've had a brief conversation with John Eidman, our town planner, because actually beyond that, he also coordinates the efforts of community development on the second floor for, across departments. So I'd like to get an idea from him, since he's a resource for planning and the ZBA, how, what that agenda item would look like and what they'd want to hear.
Okay.
Because it's a bad idea to go in front of a committee when you don't know why you're there.
You don't know the answer.
Yeah. Well, that
We
too.
would certainly know before we got there.
Yeah, got it. So you tell her that we actually have interest in both things. I think that was the consensus that we derived. Both approaches have merit, and now that she's saying it, we probably should do both approaches, unless it's some exorbitant sum, because this is foundational. If we don't get, I was complaining the first year that we didn't really have a plan, and everybody was talking about, well, not everybody, but some people were talking about dispersing money, the different projects, and we can buy this down and we can do that. We had no plan whatsoever about what our priorities were, how we were approaching anything. And I will not be eating my words next meeting when we have an important announcement to make. But sometimes things just fall into your lap that you have to be able to respond to. But routinely, we had no plan. So, for a builder to come in and say, gosh, I got this great idea, and if you could front me $250,000, I could do this. That would be competing with other priorities, and we haven't established what the priorities are and in what order. So you're right, that we don't have an
sorry.
action plan.
We have an inaction plan.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
well, couldn't avoid the COVID
yeah.
problems, but now that we're largely past that, we really do need to own up to the fact that we don't have a plan. We actually need to develop that plan, and that's what most of this is about. And sadly, I know this is redundant, but we have to have a plan to make the plan. So that's what going in front of these boards and everything is going to be about.
And can I just ask a procedural question?
Sure.
And this is just with the COVID stuff ongoing, if people are not health-wise perhaps in a situation where they can travel, can they, like if she can't come here in person, can we do a hybrid with her? I'm just throwing
I
that
think
out.
owing to the urgency of the situation and who that is that we're talking about, she probably, in whatever manner she can get here, we should afford her that opportunity.
Okay,
I'm just worried about in general doing something that's ill-defined.
yeah, I agree, yeah.
But we'll see what that looks like as time goes on. But certainly for this, it's up to her, Andrea,
Okay.
the manner in which she wants to participate. But we absolutely have to get her on an agenda next month.
Okay.
So,
Great. This is exciting.
It is,
woo-hoo.
movement.
Okay, so we've gone through the Jan Goldson contract amendment and the particulars, so we're going to, if nobody has anything further on any of that, then we're going to go forward. We got authorized at town meeting for $50,000 for a housing coordinator. And Board of Selectmen's already voted to do their signatures.
We have to vote to accept it?
We have to vote to accept the grant and authorize the chair to sign. Yeah, so basically it binds us to spend the money for that purpose, which is fine because that's what we've been doing, for several years. So if someone wishes to make a motion to accept the CPC grant in the amount of $50,000 for a housing coordinator and,
He search for one.
yeah,
I'll make a motion to accept the grant from CPC for $50,000 for a housing coordinator and to
authorize
authorize a search for one.
the chair to sign.
Second that motion.
Authorize the chair to sign.
Okay. Any further comments on that?
None?
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Housing coordinator update. I know we're kind of whizzing through this thing, but we've got some really important business in the executive session area, so just to let everybody know that that's what we're going to be doing in the second half of the meeting. And let's see here. So, Andrea,
Yes, very briefly, just to say that I shared your comments regarding your preferences for the RFP for Sisson Road with Laura Schufeld from Mass Housing Partnership. And she said that that is enough information for her to run with it and work on a draft. And she did not say when the draft would be ready, but I am hoping that there can be a document for you all to review and comment on at the next meeting.
Okay, without sounding too cryptic, I can weigh in on that. I have had occasion to be utilizing a lot of different contractors over the last few months. And just so everybody understands, it's not a question of inaction by MHP. It's really hard getting people, with competencies to do things. So the RFP, the engineering, all that kind of stuff, we're not the only people in the world who are looking for things right now, especially on the coming out part of COVID. So I just urge everybody to have a little bit of patience. It's not because we've just, even on the CPC, I know there's been a certain amount of sentiment that, what are we doing? And I guess the question is, what would we have been doing? More than what we did do. And as I said, there's going to be an announcement next meeting that I can't make now. So we've been up to stuff. But MHP also has. And so we're all the people that potentially they may be drawing on, like the engineer, to do things. So this isn't a lecture to Andrea. It's more like for the public to understand that that's where we're at. And it's exciting that they're getting back into drafting the RFP. Anything further on that?
RFP would be nice in a month.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, like I said, the ball's in their court. We're not developing it. She is. And we gave her the criteria, which is what she needed. And now we got to see what that reduces to in paper. Okay. April and May monthly reports.
I usually don't review them just to say that they exist in the packet, but if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
That's why I brought it up. So,
I have none.
anybody have?
None.
Okay. Member reports. What have you been doing over the last year and a half since we last saw each other?
Good.
And agenda building. People want things on the agenda.
I think some of the things that I've noticed over the last several months, especially during COVID, is that some opportunities have arisen that I think we should have the ability to jump on them as quickly as we can. And at this point in time, with the real estate market and the development market as it stands now and as it looks to be headed on Cape Cod, I would suggest that some of these proposals that come forward, we would consider moving on them. There are a number of them in the pipeline right now, and we should be very aware of them because not only would they benefit the town, but they benefit the longer view of the town, which our action plan will be affordable housing.
Not to be Debbie Downer here, but
Cryptic though.
it is cryptic. On the other hand, I'm going to say to that what I would say to my teenage kids when they were teens. It's like, that's a great idea. We'll have to see how much money we have. So it's all going to be dependent on that. And that's, again, that boils down to prioritization of things.
Sure.
It's like everything can't be first.
Right.
But it is an urgent problem, and I hope everybody understands that while they were holed up in their houses, it was just more than an inconvenience that people with plates from out of state were showing up and utilizing infrastructure. They were also occupying houses. And the rental situation has become abysmal, even for market rate people. Some people have taken to getting rid of their tenants so that they can Airbnb their houses. They find that to be more lucrative. But the only thing I can assure you is that regardless of what they were doing with the properties, there were more people and there's less inventory than ever. And the prices of that inventory, whether you're renting or buying, is incredibly high. So the urgency to do something about it is there right now.
It is. and we've all felt it one way or another. If, it's, you know, it's the 13 grandchildren coming down this weekend, you never know.
Well,
They're gonna all stay.
In my house.
good, I'll send my relatives over too, as long as you're entertaining. Judith, do you have anything for agenda building?
No,
or-
I've been doing a lot of reading, what's happening in other communities around the state and around the country that are in similar situations, that had a large number of second homeowners, because maybe it was a vacation resort type area, and how they're dealing with the affordable housing crisis. And it's so widespread now, it's crazy. And the other thing I've been doing some reading on, and hopefully we'll have a little report for you, is different ways municipalities are trying to shift their control over new housing coming in, and just trying to different approaches to creating affordable housing that don't exist now. And part of that is restricting very affluent homes being built in some communities. So the McMansions.
Yeah, there are also, from what I've been reading, there's also been a lot of impetus towards a two-tiered tax system.
Two-tiered, yes.
Where
Yeah.
people above a certain level wind up getting essentially an affordable housing tax imposed on them for their consumption. But
To keep the community mixed.
yeah, I mean,
you know?
I know I keep going over this again, but it's kind of like Christmas. They don't stop telling the nativity story because you heard it last year. So having said that, I'm going to say it again. The need for this is incredibly huge here particularly. We are surrounded on all four sides, albeit one of them man-made, by water. A model that other communities have in the Midwest or Northeast,
Buy
where
another
there
section.
are concentric circles and people live in different places and move in and out of areas in order to work and then go back home to a different place. We don't have that prerogative because you have to live here to be able to provide services here. Especially in the summertime, what are you going to do? Go over the bridge? Even if you lived in Plymouth, it would take you an hour and a half in each direction on certain days to get anywhere on the Cape. So it's in everybody's self-interest, and that's what those workshops are going to bring up. But I'm not talking about providing clerks for Stop and Shop. I am talking about phlebotomists, police officers, fire personnel, teachers, nurses' aides. I mean, especially with an aging population, that's a critical resource. And those folks have to be housed somewhere. And we're at the point now where, what's the area mean income for a family of four? It's 80-something thousand now, isn't it?
77 some change.
No, for family of four.
Well, family of four, it probably, because it hasn't gone up.
Andrea, is that about 82, 84, something in that area?
North of 80, yeah.
Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. Are you referring to county or town?
County, I'm not sure
County would be
I'm
fine.
not sure that anybody knows the town number right at the second.
Howard and Chatham would not be at the low end.
No, we wouldn't.
No, but I can look
My
that up by the end of the
recollection is
meeting.
it's over 80 for area mean income for a family of four. So anybody who's thinking that this is just for really low-end retail workers, it's not true. I mean, and I would also pose the problem that if you needed a CNA for your mother or something and you needed to call them in, you're not in a position to pay them $85 an hour, to be able to get them to a level where they can afford market rate things. So something's got to give.
Yep.
Brendan?
No, I agree with everything you said, and especially, I mean, I do track real estate. It's kind of something I do on the side, but the inventory was dismal, coming into this summer. It just started boosting back up, and anything from 250 to a $400,000 house
Doesn't exist.
didn't exist for a long time. And then I had personally, on business side, I had customers purchasing those homes, and then they're spending the same
$500,000
amount
more.
they paid for the house. So it's, and building is very expensive. So. the
And for
market-
anybody that wants to make a killing, yes, you make a killing now, and what happens when you go to buy a new place? If you want to live.
You're essentially going to trade down.
Central
Renovating,
Oklahoma.
yeah, renovating is creeping well over $350 a square foot now, well over that, with all the bells and whistles, so. It turns that $350,000 house into,
$700 grand.
$800,000 in a neighborhood that was never that, so.
But that's why we meet. So we're going to march on.
Historic Commission as well, where we have, we had a lot of people coming in to knock down and build bigger homes as well, so I saw it there, so you see it everywhere if you look around.
And that's not going to alleviate. I mean,
No.
to the extent that some companies are actually going to codify a partial remote participation, you could live anywhere. And people are in fact doing that.
People that work in New York are now living in Chatham, amazingly.
Well, didn't our year-round population, our voting population go up by
Up by a third.
a third? That's a lot. That's a.
Well, it wasn't a third, but it was a significant number.
5,000 people,
It's
right?
going to be equivalent raises for
That
the
would
people in
be-
town and the
Yeah.
selectmen.
That would be that third, yeah.
So usually we were
Yeah, we're gonna be
10,000,
doubling your
now we're
pay.
15.
No,
Give or
not,
take 100 here or there.
yeah,
That's significant.
it indeed is. So makes it more compelling for us to do what we do. Now, does anyone have any further comments before we dive into an executive session where I'm going to have to lock everybody out? Greg? Oh, before I do that, I recognized Greg before, but Mr. Eaton is on the call too, so I just want to recognize that he's here virtually.
Actually, I'd like to ask a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can
Sure.
you-
I was hoping maybe Pelinda Deegan could help me out here. I've been listening to a lot of what's going on with the Howard Affordable Trust and so forth. As you well know, I'm president and chairman of the board of Mid-Cape Church Homes, and we're working extremely aggressively on a project that has yet to be out to us, but there is an RFP out that we're working on. Pelinda, can you give this a little idea of what's going on regionally? If we want to talk about Dennis, Yarmouth, Harwich, Chatham, Brewster, because as has been discussed here this afternoon, we know that Chatham and Harwich are very difficult communities to find real estate. And we at Mid-Cape Church Homes have been working for well over 4 years to try to locate a parcel for workforce housing. That's our biggest concern right now. Our organization, Mid-Cape Church Homes, we have 163 units of elderly and handicapped housing, which is our Pine Oaks Villages 1 and 2 on Bank Street here, and Pine Oaks Village 3, which is on Oak Street. We've looked at a number of small parcels. One of them was the Royal, and one of them's the Sisson Road property that you've been talking about, and so forth and so on. But we're actually really looking for something more substantial. And I just wanted to ask Pelinda if she could just give us a little information about what might be going on in the towns surrounding Harwich.
You hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna pass this on to Andrea Aldana.
Yeah, I could use a little clarity on the question. Are you asking about how towns are going about acquiring larger parcels of land? Or what is the workforce housing angle to your question specifically?
Okay, well, I guess I could do right to the point. The town of Brewster is about to put out an RFP for a parcel of land for 90 bedrooms. Our organization has already hired a developer, and we've already hired an architect to answer the RFP for the town of Brewster. We're aggressively looking for land here in the town of Harwich. We've been aggressively looking at the Marceline property. I've worked with Mr. Marceline before he died, and I also worked with Mr. Gomes. And that is our absolute, would be a beautiful heavenly place for us if we were able, and Mr. Eaton, who's on the, with us right now, is the chairman of my finance committee at Mid-Cape Church Homes. He and I have walked the real estate of the old Marceline's property. I'm not referring to the Marceline property that you're going to executive session about. I'm referring to the actual old, what was the junkyard, so to speak, yes. And we like that real estate so very much for many reasons. First of all, it is Mid-Cape Church Homes, which ultimately started right here in Howard Center with the First Congregational Church. We have now broadened our horizons, and it's not all about one church. We're all, some of us, most of us are churchgoers, but the bottom line is that was the original name of the organization when we started in 1972, when we started developing Pine Oaks Villages. But what we're looking at is the actual parcel that it actually abuts the Mid-Cape Highway, Route 124, Headwater Drive, and the state-owned property, which is the bicycle trail. And it would be an absolute perfect property for affordable housing and workforce housing combined with elderly and handicapped. It's all under our mission statement now. We work, together. I think what really sort of makes me scratch my head, as I do, is that I can't understand how come we, as all of these organizations, Brewster Housing Trust, the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, Mid-Cape Church Homes, we're a nonprofit. I mean, and I spend 50% of my time doing this, and I love it. I spent the rest of my time in the Historic District Commission for 32 years. But this is more important to us right now, and as you all have just discussed, land in this region is unaffordable. And if it's even available, there are aggressive developers out there like Eastward Companies will have it in a minute. So we are working so hard, so very hard. But particularly, I just thought it was interesting for you to know that we are ready to answer Brewster's RFP for the 90 bedrooms, mostly workforce, as soon as they put it out. I just wanted you to, I think it's time for you to know that.
And I appreciate that, Greg. The only thing I can say is the state procurement laws don't treat 501c3s any differently than anybody else. So under development RFPs, I can think of HAC, possibly CDP, you folks. In that arena, you're actually competitors rather than cooperative entities because that's the way the state sets it up. You have to put your proposal in and compete with other proposals.
Totally understand that.
Okay, I just wanted the public to understand that. It's not because we don't love each other, it's because...
I just always felt like if we were on the same page, we might get there a little faster.
True, but we're not the people who designed the page.
I understand.
So.
I completely understand.
Can I ask?
Yeah, Judith.
Can I ask a question for clarification? But the town doesn't own that land that you were talking about, right? It's still owned by the family.
It is.
It just sounded like you were asking, I don't know.
No, that's the junkyard, and that
Yeah.
would be...
No, we think that in actuality, we don't know. We have our attorneys working on it, and we're trying to cooperate with the family.
Yeah.
We think that we have issues there relative to old cartways, so...
You can't be heard when you're sitting there.
Yeah, I just didn't understand if he was asking, I didn't understand if you were asking this
No,
committee something.
No, we are...
Okay.
Making us aware.
He's just letting the
Just
public
making
know.
us
We
aware.
as an
Okay.
organization have done the research,
Okay.
and we've already reached out to the family via our attorney and the family's attorney. We have no knowledge as to whether there's a clear 21E. In other words,
Yeah.
can we even use the land for development as a result of what it was previously used for, number
Right.
one. Number two, we also don't know if the land has all clear title, because there were cartways to cranberry bogs and that sort of thing. So it's quite likely that there are sections of this property that aren't on clear title. So, but if the family and the attorneys and the community were to try to work together, I don't think that it's an impossibility to take by eminent domain if necessary. There are many ways to get around it. I think the most important thing is to prove that there's a 21E, and also a clean 21E, which I think Handler's Junkyard has just approved.
So they're probably in the process for that.
I'm sorry?
I said they're probably in the process for that?
I think so. I'm not exactly
I'd
sure.
kind of like the standpoint, though,
Yeah.
because we can't
Yeah,
negotiate over
Of course not. No, I'm
over
just,
TV.
It's just all for education, that's all.
Sure. Larry, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that is endemic to Cape Cod, and especially true in that particular area of town. There are a lot of questionable titles and a lot of environmental questions, none of which can be answered. But if that is something that Mid-Cape homes are looking toward, we have avenues that we could well be a partner in, but nobody else does.
But we'll have to see how much money we have.
Did I make myself clear?
Larry, you made yourself very clear, and I appreciate it.
And we certainly wish you well in the endeavor. That's,
No, but I just honestly believe that if we were to cooperate, all of us, including Dennis, Harwich, Brewster, Orleans.
The difficulty is, I'll mention there, anything we do for Chatham, Orleans, Dennis, or Yarmouth, it don't count. It goes against our 10%. The 10% is the number we're looking to get. And anything we do in the other towns, the Commonwealth has not seen fit to give us credit for helping.
well, let me dive into that. I've had conversations with the executive director, Christy Sandatorio of the Cape Cod Commission, and I went deeper into that discussion. The way the state's laws work in terms of hostile 40Bs, we have to achieve a 10% affordable housing inventory in a town. The legislature does not allow for averaging that out across a region.
Outreach.
It's peculiar to the town that you're in. And our CPC, where most of our money comes from, has explicitly stated it's Harwich money and it has to be spent in Harwich on a Harwich project.
So Mr. Howell, I'd love to ask you this question because I know you're more knowledgeable than I am about this, but let's take the town of Chatham, for instance. And it's my understanding, and I've been doing this for a number of years now, quite a number of years, that there are communities that are in more dire states, shall we say, even than Harwich, for this kind of affordable workforce housing. Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, but particularly Chatham. And it's my understanding that the town of Chatham has the ability to donate their money from their funds. Go ahead, Larry.
Yes, they can, and they do.
Okay, that's what I want to clarify.
But they don't
Doesn't go against-
They don't get credit.
They don't get-
Brewster gets the credit when they donate the money. They don't. They get no credit whatsoever.
So if they donate the money, Chatham donates the money to the town of Harwich, and we build the housing in Harwich, Chatham doesn't get the credit.
We get credit, they give us the money.
And let's put
Yeah, I
it,
just wanted to be clear.
They get a good.
No, let
pat on the
everybody-
back.
and
I
let
mean,
everybody-
They're doing something good, but.
let everybody understand what we're talking about. It's credit with a big C, not a little c. It's we need to statistically get to a percentage over 10% of affordable housing inventory in order to be relieved of our obligation to have developers come in with 40Bs that we don't want. Because we don't have that ability when we're under 10%. We can pick a project apart as to its particulars, but a so-called hostile 40B can happen until you get over 10%. And the way the legislature calculates that is town by town. It's where the inventory is built, not where the money came from. And what I've been talking about with Christie, so that she can talk with our legislative people across the Cape, is perhaps advocating legislation that would allow the Cape, much like the DCPC doesn't exist anywhere else, might allow the Cape to be treated as a region rather than town by town.
That'd be nice.
It would be extraordinarily helpful if that could happen.
That would be very nice. Well, I just wanted to attend this meeting just because I feel as though my good friend and chairman of my finance committee, Al Eaton, has been following up on these meetings, and he's also worked with Pelinda. And this is actually the first Affordable Housing Trust meeting that I've made here in Harwich. But I just think that it's very important for all of us to understand that we're all working toward the same goal. And that goal is we have to have workforce housing, because you said it, we can't afford the people that live here, the clerks in town hall, our teachers in our schools, our fire, our police, they can't afford to live in this town. We have trophy homes, and every day there are more houses coming down and trophy homes going up. And the real estate is getting so expensive so fast.
We're familiar with that.
And there's very few rentals, but there'll be the rentals in this
Greg, we
town
hear you.
center.
We're doing our best,
Yeah.
you know, and if we're in Boston, Springfield, Lowell, Chicopee, they don't have to worry about an unfriendly 40B because there's no such thing. They all have 10% housing. We don't. So until such time as we get that 10% number, all on our own.
By the way, we do have important business coming up, but you haven't been at the meeting, so I'm going to repeat our gold standard here. Unless somebody can actually step across a threshold and find a roof over their head, we have not done anything. So that's the gold standard for this. It's not talking about the problem. It's not lamenting the other stuff is happening. It's about getting numbers of people into an apartment or a house that they can afford. And until there's a roof over their head, I don't define that anything as success before that.
And quite frankly, I'll add to what Mr. Chairman has said. If we can help you in any way, we will.
Okay. Does anybody have any further comments? Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
For the meeting, because as I said, we got a very important executive session, and we need
Yep.
we need that statement, however, to go into executive session. We need to.
Yep. We're done.
You want to select our next meeting?
No. Well, yeah.
We'll leave the meeting open.
We have to leave this meeting open, but the meeting date for next month, when would that be, if we followed the plan?
Isn't it July 15th?
July 15th.
Yeah.
16th?
That Thursday.
1/5.
1/5.
5. Good.
1 p.m.
July, that's fine.
Got-
Well, I've already got it written down.
Yeah, I do too.
Fine with me.
Gee, thanks. Okay. I'm still looking for the statement. For the future, there has to be a statement in the agenda that references why we're eligible to go into executive session. I'm looking at prior ones from the Board of Selectmen.
Let me see this. I think it's just a motion that we'll go into executive session and not resume.
Well, that be the case, but for the purposes of, we need a motion to go into executive session to deliberate over land acquisition when the discussions could not be held publicly as they would compromise
Negotiation.
negotiations, and that further, we will be adjourning in the executive session, and we will not be coming back into public session. But the existence of that emergency is doing so publicly would compromise the negotiation, and the chair so declares, which I am declaring that it would. So
I would therefore move that we
move into executive
Go
session
into executive session, and at the end of executive.
for the purposes of
For the purposes
negotiating
of
real estate.
negotiating land acquisitions, and at the end of discussions, we will not be going back into a public session.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, as soon as we take the vote, as I said, we're going to go off the grid, and both Channel 18 and the GoToMeeting will be off. I hope you guys have a pleasant 4th of July, because some of you I will not see before the next meeting.
Fireworks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,